upset that Smith got a contract and Hardy did not.
Let's revisit this one last time, and I hope it's the last time. But if Greg Hardy is just talking about his domestic violence issue, you would have to give him that point. Just to reiterate, on appeal, he was cleared of his North Carolina domestic violence charge, and it was expunged from his record. And his 10-game NFL suspension on appeal was reduced to 4 games, which he served, as we all know, to start last football season, so he paid his NFL price. We all also know that he has not shown even one hint or ounce of remorse or contrition. Now, what apparently Greg Hardy does fail to understand is what happened after all that, purely in the football context with my Dallas Cowboys. Again, to reiterate, he was reportedly, repeatedly late for Dallas Cowboy meetings. Reportedly, he became a quote-unquote bad teammate, difficult to get along with, according to his ex-teammate Jeremy Mincey. Meanwhile, he threw himself some big Dallas parties, which didn't sit well with some of his teammates and obviously some of his coaches and Jerry Jones and son Steven. And, of course, there was the huge sideline blow-up in which he invaded the special teams huddle to chew out some of the special teams players, got into it with the special teams coach, who ended up having to shove Greg Hardy out of that huddle. We both said the next day, on Monday on this show, he appeared a little unstable on the sideline, and we both have agreed that he may be unstable. Those are the main reasons going forward that at best he will get some incentive-laden, fairly cheap contract with somebody who will take a high-risk chance on Greg Hardy. But back to Aldon Smith, we all know he's had all sorts of alcohol-related problems that led to a year-long suspension. But to my knowledge, to our knowledge, in the football context, he hasn't been nearly the problem that Greg Hardy was last year with my Cowboys.
I agree with all of that. What I would add to it, however, is that your last point, or your second to last point, the penultimate point, because here's what it comes down to, Skip. Not only did Greg Hardy, Aldon Smith, appear not to have any issues with the team he was playing with, but right or wrong, there's a difference between you having a problem and you being a problem. In Aldon Smith's case, no matter hit and run, drunk driving charges, you know, the situation at the airport, whatever, if you are inebriated and you are believed to have a substance abuse issue, as intolerable as some of us may be to those things as well, at least from a plausible perspective, you can stomach it because you're a victim of substance abuse. In the case of Greg Hardy, not only was there the domestic violence issues, but there's also your behavior while that was going on in terms of you partying and being dismissive about it, where you appeared clearly lucid and just dismissive of what you have been accused of. And then when nobody is calling you and you're looking for a new contract, now you decide to sit down with Adam Schefter. And then even there, the level of contrition that people were looking for, you didn't have. So in the case of Aldon Smith, we don't see him doing interviews. We don't hear from him. But we're also aware of why that may be. This brother might very well have a substance abuse issue. Again, both are problematic. Both are issues that no team should want to have to deal with. But there is a level of sympathy that gets accorded to an individual when that individual seems to be somebody incapable of fending off the addiction / attraction or whatever your case may be to something, as opposed to somebody who basically sits there and tells the world, kick rocks, I am who I am, I'm going to do what I want to do, and that's the way that it goes. That's the problem with the Greg Hardy. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about reality in terms of, because remember, as offensive as it may be to so many people, and as it pertains to what the allegations are against Greg Hardy, let's keep in mind that the one thing he has been consistent about is his innocence. He believes he didn't do anything wrong. The problem is he appears to have no sensitivity to the evidence that the rest of us have reached. And he hasn't addressed it. And not only that, there's no quote-unquote substance abuse issue. So what are you succumbing to other than your own ego?
Okay.
Whereas in ALDON Smith, it may very well be a substance abuse issue, which garners at least a scintilla of sympathy.
Okay, so you're saying if we keep it on domestic violence versus substance abuse, just on that level, that he does have some point about why did he get a contract before I got a contract?
He has a point in asking the question, but he seems oblivious to what his actions are that keeps it front and center when we talk about him. He doesn't realize that the things that he does on the field, in terms of being out of control, Des Bryant having to calm him down, a special teams coach and others pushing him out of the huddle, he doesn't realize that your issues are directly related to anger management issues in the eyes of so many people. So when he behaves the way that he behaves and exudes the level of defiance that he has exuded, it gets attached to what the allegations were against him that ultimately ended up with him being convicted in court by a judge during a bench trial, even though he appealed and ultimately he was thrown out because reportedly he settled with the girl. In the case of ALDON Smith, every time we think about him, you know what we think about? Substance abuse. You got to remember, isn't this the same guy that ran into a tree at 7 in the morning and was inebriated? Now, we were appalled because we were like, wait a minute, kids are going to school at that particular time. You can't be getting behind the wheel of a car. But again, when you are impaired, you are not of your right mind. Whereas Greg Hardy, you're looking at him and you're saying, well, he's lucid. That's his right or wrong. Let's say instead of right mind, wrong mind. That's his wrong mind. And he doesn't seem to care. That's your problem. That's his problem. And that's what he needs to see other people are seeing from him. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened with Greg Hardy. But I do know he has not made himself look good. And that is what he owns. And he doesn't recognize, he doesn't realize what he's doing to himself. And that's the problem. Whereas ALDON Smith may realize it, but just can't help it because of substance.
Okay, but bottom line, I do agree with Jason Cole's sort of bottom line that the biggest problems right now facing Greg Hardy are not domestic violence and how he dealt with it, lack of remorse. It's how he acted as a football player.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is how he acted as a football player gets attached to the domestic violence because it's, in terms of behavior, in everybody's eyes, it's all the same. The difference is you had a relatively, you're perceiving the woman to be a relatively helpless human being, whereas on a football field, you're going up against another grown man, but you're still acting the same. And if you can't control yourself, and that's how you come across, then it's easy to perceive you can't control yourself anywhere. And that's the problem.
That is true.
Yeah, I'd be curious who's in his inner circle there helping him out, Greg Hardy.
Well, they're trying. I'm not going to sit there and say his agent and others aren't trying. But they're not being very successful right now.
Sometimes you're not open to it. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little NBA again. We know what they're chasing. The Warriors need to win out in order to eclipse the Bulls' record, and someone is saying that if they only win 72 games, it would be a disappointment.